This episode is for my fellow Nigerians. We need to build stuff. I'm tired of hearing we need to buy 2 houses or 3 houses. I mean, you should do that. But we need to build stuff. And Dotun makes a strong case of why we react the way we react to things, the head mentality and all that. I did try to defend us a bit. But I think the end is we need to build stuff. Yeah. We need to build. Let's get to the episode. Enjoy. People talk a lot about the concept of the whole self, and I see a lot of what you do with marketing and stuff, and since you moved here. But I'm curious, like, how do you see yourself now? Do you see yourself differently before you moved and after moving? Like, who was Dots in Nigeria? Who was Dots now in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Dotun becoming Dots. Let's just
Exactly.
put it that way. First, thank you for having me. But yeah, it's I don't think much has really changed. I think I'll be expecting a lot of existential, reflective questions. Yeah, so it's very, very nice like asking that. But I don't think much has really changed, other than the fact that I consider myself this a melancholy that is trying to be a sanguine. The guy that is trying to crack the jokes. Boring. They're always boring anyway. And the guy that is just. I mean, one thing that has not changed is how shameless I am. That has really, really helped my career in general. I break all the rules that can be breakable. Maybe in growth in life, even how we approach faith, and that's how I've been even from back home, because aside from marketing, one of my other passions is history. And I've probably consumed more biographies than the average person. So when you see the lives of people and you see the kinds of behaviors that they had to do to transform to who they were, you can see that it's just being authentic. It's just being foolish and hungry, and that has stayed with me. Now, in terms of what has changed, like the standard behave like a Roman, thing, right? I had to, and I'm glad I was able to find it. I had to tweak my accent a little bit, and then you have to use the high tone. Where are you going? Are you coming? Hey, hey, huh? And because I got a job very early, I got a job a week after I came, so I was sort of thrust into that client services, and clients will call my boss that they can't understand what he's saying. It was around that time that I also changed my name to Dots. We can discuss why that as well. But despite some of the minor adjustments, I think myself, me as a person, the guy that connects the dots, pun intended, has a really, really changed. If I'm being honest, and I for anyone on this pod, I think that should really, really be the same thing. I don't know if this is an environment that, depending on who you are, allows you to be yourself more. But I don't even look at that. I just be myself anyway. And if you don't want to be with me, good luck.
You explore something interesting, and I mean, I think the follow-up question of this should be why you changed your name. I want to hear that story, but I want to first even just explore something. So I see people talk about how the name is a function of who the person is, and I can imagine that when your parents called you Dotun, I'm probably sure Dotun is actually even a short version of the full name.
Yes.
There's probably is Ola Dotun or something else behind.
There's even a bigger expansion.
Exactly.
Yes,
so it just feels like society keeps asking us to reduce who we are behind the name.
Yeah.
And so we do that.
Yeah.
But you raised something interesting, which is that even if you decided to change the name to fit in, it still doesn't change who you are, which is a very interesting concept because like people talk a lot about how I see people complain about, oh, I've changed my name, so I'm
Mm,
changing part of myself.
mm.
Why do you think it's not that? Why do you think it's that way?
I mean, maybe for those who said it, they might be right in some ways, but largely it is my belief that, and I didn't invent this quote, I promise you. It's not who you are underneath. It is what you do that defines you. It is not who you are underneath. It is what you do that defines you. It's a quote from Batman Begins.
Yeah.
And I mean, come to think of it, to say if Lucifer didn't do what he did against God, a lot of people would be naming their children Lucifer today.
Yes.
It was because of what he did, not because of that name. So for me, realizing that, I felt, it's not it's not much of an issue. Now, like I said, for some people it might be consequential, right? And my name translates to renewal or being new. That's it's actually like kind of like a Christian name, if you like. I wish I had a Christian name, but I don't. But uh, yeah, I mean, there's a part of renewal in me as a person, but that's kind of like pretty standard, anyway. So, but it's not. At the end of the day, it's the principles you live by. It's your outlook on life. My outlook on life, for example, is it's not the end of the world, right? I lost $1 million. It's not, I'm still alive. There's somebody with out there with $350 billion net worth, right? It's not the end of the world, right? And so on and so forth, like that. Equity, fairness. That's one of the things that I stand by. Those are the things that really make a person. Not the name per se. The name is part of it, and maybe sometimes it's consequential, maybe it's not. Sometimes you just have to change it for adaptability. But at the end of the day, there's no difference. And I'm sorry to say this, but sometimes within our community, we're just in a rat race when it comes to that name and whether it's consequential or not. And you name a child, you give a child one name, then you have a middle name, then the child grows up, you change the middle name to the first name. Why wouldn't you have at birth given that person that name you were giving the person later in life, right? I've met people who bear two names. One of my family members, they bear a name in the corporate world outside, they bear another name at home. Like, it's just, that is really what you don't want, because you're trying to justify some type of meaning. uh you know there are people who would change their name and then, or change the name of all their children, and they realize that their children, there are other people that are bearing that name, and there's a lot of similar, there are issues with name tags and things like that. Like, it's it doesn't matter whether you change your name or don't change your name. Doesn't matter. It is who you are, the things that you do, that defines you as a person, that really gives you that identity, and some of your other life's anchors, if you like, that gives you that identity. And that's really what I stand by.
That's interesting. I mean, I know that's a controversial take, to be honest. I would say, I mean, because you're right. Like, maybe it's not much a big thing down here in the West, but I feel like if you probably the global South and a couple of other places, naming is a huge part of identity. It's a huge part of culture. Sometimes it's passing down stuff, and so I can understand when people battle with that. But then again, you make a point that can be ignored, which is that it's really what you do with it. It's really what you do that defines your identity to some extent. But
I mean, think
it,
about
it's
it. And sorry to
it's
cut your short here. Who invented tradition? It's humans like you and I that came up with tradition, right? I can be, sometimes when I'm reflecting, I'm out there with my mind. um and I'm like, this, we in the Nigerian culture would like to wear this, regalia, right? Somebody came up with that, and somebody turned that to gospel. And decades, centuries, maybe millennia later, and people are still doing it. So what is my point there? If culture and tradition were things that were invented by people, then breaking that culture or reinventing that culture or seeing that culture in a new light is also something that is invented by people. So why not be that person? That's sort of how I see status quo and things like that. And we could get into that. But yeah, sorry, I know I cut you short, but
No, that's okay.
I rant.
But no, that's okay. But again, I mean, I hear you on that, and but and because with this is not you're not ranting. It's an important conversation because this thing is really it's at the core of a lot of what drives a lot of immigrants. The conversation of the whole self. Who am I?
Mm,
Who do I? What shows up when I'm at work or when I move to a new country?
mm,
And but back to culture and what you just said, there's this thing. I hear you, and
mm,
I agree because I
mm.
mean, I think I was born a rule breaker. I've done things that I shouldn't talk about. I can't talk about on
No,
camera.
very, 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 very obvious. Yeah.
But why did you say very obvious? You explained that for that after
No,
the show.
yeah, we'll say after the show. Yeah, I mean, your
I don't
brand
want to
and
catch you
all
on recording.
that.
Yo, but there's something they call the Chesterton's fence, and as I've grown older, I've
Okay.
come to believe in it, which says that when you see a fence,
Mhm.
you're like break it down. But most times, it's actually good to understand why that fence was created.
Mm.
Because when you understand why the fence was created, then you know how to approach breaking it down. I
Yeah.
think my thing with status quo conversations on culture and stuff and identity and everything is that most times we don't spend time understanding why those things came up. Because I feel like when we understand why those things came up, we start to even see that maybe it was wrong all along, or we've moved on from it, or we need to adjust it
Yeah.
in a bit. But again, like I said, you make a really strong argument because when you move to a new place, like, are you still Nigerian or are you now Canadian? Like, who are you actually? It's a very weird concept because
Yeah.
yes, I moved here when I was in my 30s and I've lived here for 4 years now. So who am I? Like,
Yeah.
the day I moved, the day I moved away from the geographical boundaries of the culture I was raised in and I came
Yeah.
here, who did I become? You
Yeah.
know, yes, there's all the things I carry with me, tradition, how I was raised. That like I will carry that, and that shapes me to some extent.
Mhm.
But do I hold on to that in a strange, different place and say that that's who am I and that's how I'm going to interact with this world? And then I start to fight people when they don't understand me. So which is why I say you raise a very interesting point about like, so what do you now do in that situation? And I feel
Yeah.
like that's what you're talking about. Like that's the
Yeah.
why what you're talking about is really good.
Yeah. No, I like what you're describing. And if you're on the pod, don't get me wrong, right? My kid, maybe she may not be able to speak it, but she probably understands everyday Yoruba language. So that preservation of culture is better. But what I decided to do when I came was that I don't want to say Africa is not a universal space, but it feels more universal when I moved to Canada. So it's kind of like you're in the West kind of thing. And I had to start looking at life in a very universal sense. And I looked at that in respect to my culture. So what are the things that are relevant and the things that are not relevant? I was born in a very conservative Christian community. Um, but if you come here and, you might be able to survive if you wear skirts because you've hacked it, but it will not be very easy in minus 25 degrees temperature, right? So, and so on and so forth. The way people will fast and pray here, they say you can fast with coffee, and things like that. Things are very different because not just the environment is different, but it's also looking at from a universal lens. So I'm encouraging people to two things I want to say. First thing, I encourage people to look at their own nuances, cultural nuances. Nigeria as a country is very fragmented. Even though we both see ourselves as Nigerians, we have completely different way of looking at things. You
Yeah.
will call me by name, but I will call you Boda Dozie.
Yeah.
If I don't call
Culture
you
is
that,
strong.
yeah, it's very strong, even in the same country. But look at what is relevant, keep that. What is not relevant or what will not help you in this environment, take it out, right? They didn't really beg you to come to Canada. You came, on your, the invite was open, you came on your own volition, right? Canada will find immigrants in other places if you're not interested. That's the first point. The second point is this: as a lover of history, the Rwanda genocide would not have gotten to the level that it got to if the enemies or the people at the top that orchestrated it didn't use Rwanda's culture of obedience. And when I watch that story and I read about it or I listen to it or I watch it, I realize that the culture of obedience is not a Rwanda thing. It's an African thing. It's a Nigerian thing. This fear of missing out syndrome, this what I call extreme social proof syndrome, is also something that affects us immigrants while we are here and removes a lot of independent thoughts. When I came in here, I met people who told me, it takes 7 months to get a job, do this, do that. You know how it goes. They'll give you all kinds of advice. And those advices are great. But it's not all those advices that you have to take. I got a job, real job, not transition job. And I'm saying this with all grace. A week after I came. I got the offer letter a week after I came. So I was even negotiating, So it's your story as a person, as a family, is going to be different from every other person's story, right? There are many groups out there in Canadian space, US in general, with Africans and Nigerians that do certain things, and people will share general advice, and then you're supposed to take that as gospel. No, check it. Do your own research as well. Look at the universal data around things in life, in different areas. There was a time where a lot of immigrants were taking on IT jobs because there's this fear of missing out factor, right? Even if you didn't feel like doing IT, even if you didn't feel IT was your talent, or even if you didn't feel comfortable in IT, you just wanted to do it because there is this herd mentality that Africans have. I think that we should be very, very careful about that. We are coming to a place where, in a way, there's moderate equal opportunity, and we just try our own part and see where it goes. So that's something that I've been, thanks for giving me the platform to be able to vent that, because that's also something that also helps with identity, because sometimes you build our identity on other people. You don't know their background, you don't know their history, you don't know even if they are lying to you, about certain things about themselves. You just want to follow them. Somebody did this, I must do it too. Don't live somebody else's life. That's a very important point for any immigrant.
Don't you think that it's a function of people just trying to survive? Because so I hear because when I moved here, I remember someone telling me that I could not get a marketing job. Like I should just go and do project management. I said, you don't know what you're talking about. I got a job in 6 weeks. But again, so I'm a big fan of understanding where people are coming from. You think that's a function? Like I hear you on the culture of obedience, but I do think that that's it. There are human beings do that across the world, just in varying degrees. I mean, for example, Canada has its own interesting
Africa's
culture.
degree is the highest.
Well, maybe yes. Yes, maybe yes. To some extent, I agree.
Anko is an example of that. When we wear the same clothes, now we behave the same way. But anyway, keep going.
But don't you think that the fact that you're trying to survive exacerbates that behavior? Because literally, you move to a new country, you're scared of, everyone tells you that you're going to have to start paying bills. You probably don't have a couple of friends, and then you're just literally they say, oh, project manager, okay, that's how I get a job fast. And then people do that. So you don't think that plays a role, or you think that it's totally a thing of base of, our culture?
No, yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's a means to survive. But I'll be very honest on this podcast. And I think one of the other things that I've seen is that even those with experience, are still in that culture of obedience. And let's use the job thing as an example, project management. Okay. If you are trying to get a project manager because it gets you access to a job, that's fine, right? But then when you're trying to get to project management as a means to earn 7 figures or 6 figures, then that becomes a herd mentality. It's not about what you enjoy doing. It's about that money. You want to be able to, the Range Rover that you cannot buy in Nigeria. Sorry, I need to go back to my Nigerian accent here. You want to buy it here, right? And then it's all about that, indirect intimidation. Oh, this is what is trending now. Let's do it. You know, that's where I have a problem. I don't have a problem if it's a means of survival, because of course it's not easy. And tell me about it. But don't do it because people feel, oh, this is what is happening to get to the next level, and don't do it. The other issue is the lack of foresight that sometimes we might have, because there is this thing going around now, and that's what is trending. And so your eyes are blocked to other kinds of possibilities or other kinds of choices that you might make that will help you in the long term, right? So it's very prohibitive to do that. It's very dangerous to do that as well. And you don't want to live a life of regret. You don't want to live a life where after 30 years or after 20 years, you may have all the money in the world, but because somebody convinced you or intimidated you to do something that you wanted to, or put on an identity that you didn't want to, and then you missed out. So that is really where, and sometimes we don't do any research. Lucia told me something, I'm doing it. I'm not doing my research anymore. No, you got to do your own research on everything, every single thing, because your nuance is going to be different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be different. People might not like you because of that. They might ostracize you because of that unknowingly, but at least you've got peace, and you got their respect. You may not have them as close friends or whatever, or I don't know, emotional gang members,
Yeah.
but they will respect you, and that is what I've seen in my own life.
Sometimes so this thing you're saying is interesting, because I was gonna add, I'll ask you the next question. I will move on from this, but I was gonna add, like, social ostracization by your tribe is a very hard thing to deal with.
Yeah.
It's even worse in a new country. So, like, I'm not trying to give excuses for people. I just like to I think I just like to apply what I call, like, nuance. Is that some of us we are raised to be rebels, just the way we watched our parents rebel stuff. And so my father was a professor. My father did things that, God rest his soul. My father did interesting things, and so when I do things, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm my dad's child. Like, I'm my dad,
Yeah.
But not everybody had that privilege, and so, because when your tribe says to you that you don't fit in, it can hurt a lot. And then when you move to a new place where you get upended and you now are looking for any place to fit in,
Yeah.
people bend over to fit in. People, like, bend really over to fit in. But again, like I said, I'm not giving an excuse, because I do think that we can spend some time thinking. Because part of why I started this podcast was that I said to someone that the immigrant experience is your experience. It's you.
Yes.
Your story is not my story. We might share the same themes, the same pillars, but how you come at it is not how I'll come at it.
Yes.
The worst thing I'll do is to assume that Dot's story is my story. I am done for. Just finish. Kaput.
Yes.
Blown up. Everything bad. Because, I mean, like, you're right. Like, and the thing about life is that when you least expect it, is going to remind you that you messed up.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely sure. And you're right. People sometimes have to bend in, to fit in, because of that fear of missing out. I agree with you that it helps to be a rebel. Like, bro, from day one, I've always been listening to rock music, even though I was in Nigeria. Even till now, I hate it. Maybe it's only Johnny Drill I listen to, because it's also like rock music. I hate Nigerian music.
You're not normal, Sha.
I'm not normal. No,
You hate
I'm
Nigerian
like,
music.
I've been listening to Domwe and all that. I mean, I get, even like, everything in me was kind of like just like at the opposite end. Like, so it helped me to think radically about life, to think radically about how we approach everything, faith and all that stuff. So that helps. That helps. That's number one. But you're right about people thinking as well. Think about it. There are some things in life that are universal, like success, like failure, like regret, right? Why not address your road to those destinations through a very universal lens as well, right? Um, I met a guy, real estate agent. He's actually my real estate agent, but when I say I met him, it's kind of like how I'm meeting you. Like we've been doing online, but now we've spoken and all that, and maybe hopefully we'll get a beer soon or coffee. But this guy was telling me about, how most of his clients are like from other Canadians, other races, and I'm like, that's strange because ideally we love that community, and I'm not saying there's anything bad in it, but you're sort of taking a very unique approach to things. I'm like, yeah, he just found himself in there. I'm like, so you're not in like any Nigerian financial real estate group? I'm like, yeah, my wife tells me to do it, but I'm not. I'm like, bros, like I was just like we say from Nigeria, whining him, right? And he kept on telling me that he, even the kind of things he invests in, like he's investing in cars. I'm like, am I dreaming? Is this a Nigerian talking to me? Because we Nigerians, once we hear something that is general, that's what we're going to do. Well, so a Nigerian investing in cars, that's like in Calgary, that's like radical stuff, right? So,
Is
and
it
I was like,
radical or is it just exposure?
that's a good point. That's a good
Is it
point.
radical or is it just exposure?
Okay, I think it's exposure because the guy said, even though he's my age or maybe a little older, he's been in Canada for 22 years.
It's because
so maybe there's a bit of exposure.
Yeah, because there's something you said earlier on that I kept thinking about. No one had ever put it that way, and it made a lot of sense. You talked about how when you move here, it's universal. So I started thinking about is the universality in Canada a function of the multiculturalism, which is the function of the immigrants that have moved in here, which means that the culture you see when you move here is very different because it's not. Nigeria is fragmented, yes.
Yeah.
The Yorubas are not the Igbos. The Igbos are not the Ibibios. The Ibibios are not the Efiks. It's all that. But still, because we are from one country, we're very like just
we have some common things.
Yeah, there are some.
We are very sentimental.
Yeah, there are some things that we hold on to. But when you move here, all of a sudden you're here, and there are people from all over the world, which means that whether you want to accept it or not, the culture will come at your face that nothing is the same anymore. Because that point you made, I kept thinking about it like universal. That's actually good to think about it. Like countries that don't. So what immigration probably does is that it does these sort of things, but then the part where I support you is that. But then when you come as an immigrant, you need to recognize that and open your mind to it. Because when you close your mind to it, then you're in your own what's it called? You're in your own cocoon, and but then you're like in this beautiful place with people from all over the world. Why don't you just learn and see what you can learn?
You see, it's a strange combination that we have as a community. Even though we have this head mentality where we are kind of like followers, we also have intellectual ego. Or if I'm being blunt, allow me to be blunt, intellectual arrogance.
And we went to school. We went to a lot of school.
So we are very educated. I think that has made it worse, But we that arrogance also allows us to stay in our ways and be proud of things that are not meant to be proud of. I used to tell my people at home, don't try to be proud of things that don't matter. My teeth is whiter than yours. I can speak longer than you without drinking water. I can run different miles than yours. Those are the things that we Africans and Nigerians grew up with. That's what we see as aspiration. I can spell hippopotamus. Where you are spelling hippopotamus, your mate, in a Caucasian, is already, building a dictionary. That was the real research, right? So you're right about opening your mind. And I know it's not easy because for somebody like me, I've been exposed even before I left the country. I freelanced with different people around the world. I see how working styles are. Like I said, a lot of Western exposure as well. So that sort of helped me. But some of us, we just need to accelerate that exposure to say, here's where we are. We are not ready to go back to eat cassava, gari, and ewa. So let's stay here. This is our home now, and we need to behave like the Romans while still holding our identity, like you said earlier, right? So that's you said something about people needing to think, and you're right. I think we need to think as immigrants. I know there are certain immigrant groups that have been through that phase. I don't want to mention the name because I don't want to give too much, but they've gone into that, they've looked at what it is, and the world has recognized them. In business, for example, the world has recognized them. We need to find our own path around that, right? And it's not about Dozier and Dots having a joint mortgage. That's not what I'm talking about. That's great if you want to do that. But I'm talking about we need to find our own path to be open-minded, be hungry, be foolish, and do whatever it takes to shine, right? I may not be seen as the social person per se, but I've even seen people call me geeks, but call me geek whatever you want. I can pay my bills. That's universal, right? The geekiness doesn't matter if I can pay my bills, right?
This space you're going is very interesting for many reasons. Like I want to ask you the story of the name, but maybe we'll forget that for now.
Yeah,
because this is your great. I like. Let me tell you why it's very interesting. Because I almost want to say that you're being a bit impatient in a way. Here's why I say that. So there's a book written by, I think it's Marianne Kingston. I forget the name now. Let me just check Amazon. Sorry, just hold on.
No worries.
Where's that thing?
People
The Woman Warrior.
Okay.
Maxine Hong Kingston.
Okay.
The Woman Warrior. It's about the Chinese young. It's a memoir.
Yeah.
About the Chinese girl.
Yeah.
And she talks about a long time ago. And when you read the history of immigrants or immigration, and the various people that have moved over time, you kind of start to understand that, or rather, don't you think that groups go through cycles? And so, for example, I know I was in a meeting with someone. I was meeting someone like on this weekend on Sunday or so, and we're talking about how there are groups that have immigrated for years, and so they've gone through different cycles. They just, and then they've come to this point now. So we see them and we want to be like them. Yeah. But the truth is that you need to go. You have to learn. You have to go through. You have to struggle. And the other part also is that the other part, which goes back to our intellectual arrogance, which I'm throwing that back at you, is that a lot of us moved here and we're very educated. Yeah. That in itself is an advantage and a disadvantage because we theorize too much. We are scared. We come with a certain fear of taking risk. That's because we feel that we have a lot to lose. Yeah. And while I'm all for building for yourself, the real truth is that if we really want to win, or if we really want to do what you're asking us that we should do as a community, then we need to build for the long term. So it's not me, it's my child. My child will stand on my shoulders and touch where I couldn't touch. That should be the goal. Because this community is talking about, like, I know, like, I mean, there's a story of it's a place, some guy was writing about somewhere in the US. And he talks about how the Jews, the Blacks, the Puerto Ricans, and the Spanish had different places they lived in, and they used to fight. Yeah. And then there's a part of the road where when they cross over, the police will ask them, "What are you doing here?" Because on that side of the road was where Dick and Sally lived, the white kids lived. Yeah. And so when you look back at that time, you see, so those people at that point in time, like, they were going through their own phase. And I wonder if that's what's happening to us right now. But then it's just that we are doing it at a time when, we are more educated. So is that a strength or a weakness for us? That intellectual arrogance, as you call it. It's like, are we thinking too much of this thing? Or
Yeah.
are we not saying to ourselves, okay, this game is long, and I need to build for not just for myself, but for the people in front. Because even those other the communities you're talking about, I know the communities you're talking about. If you go back to their history and all they've built over time, you see like they've done stuff.
Yeah.
But
I completely agree with you, and you made a lot of nice points. Let's just say that they say there's 12 years in every generation, right?
Yeah.
So
I think it's 40 though, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean some people, well, let's say 48 years it will take for some significant transformation, right? My kid, for example, I know one day she'll be a great writer or great whatever, mathematician, whatever it is, or even if it's whatever else she wants to do.
Yeah.
But it needs to start from being able to hold the pencil properly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for us, we need, I'm seeing some level of hope, but I need to see more. Now, if you're going to get from here to, it's true, if you're going to get from here to say, I don't know, you are going to the East Coast, you're going to start from the West Coast and then go to the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
You start that journey well. And I need to see more of that start. So for somebody, for us as a community that need to thrive, we need to get away from, like to your point, we need to get away from limiting thoughts, and we need to have more courage. Those are foundational stuff before you even start the journey at all. You mentioned something else about how education has given us this sense of stability. All right.
False sense of stability.
False sense of stability. Let me try and there's a Yoruba adage. I'll try to translate it here. It says that whether the boss sells or doesn't sell, the worker must receive his salary. So we love the stability, right? We don't want to take risks. But I've been seeing some changes in that. People are thinking of different things, right? People are taking some level of courage. You know, my wife was telling me the other day that a guy lost 100K on the stock market. You know, I was like, I didn't say it was good, but in my mind, I was like, that's good. Do you know why? Because we finally find people that are taking risks, they are learning lessons, and that same mindset they will use it to build, I don't know, $1 billion company or become or the CEO of Google or the CEO of Alphabet. You know, we don't want to talk about the people, like you said. but that's in my mind, I was like, that's good. The kind of friends I have, I'll say this publicly, people that I admire like yourself are the radicals. If you're not a radical, you might just be an acquaintance. You can't be my friend. Because that's the base. I'm saying this all sense of grace. That is the foundation. That is the foundation. So if we don't get out from the foundation, then how do we get to the destination? Think about that.
I mean, I hear you. Like, I hear you. You know, I'm just, I can be devil's advocate very well.
No, I know. I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation and not doing small talk is great, because we as a community need to start doing that. We need to start having these very intellectual conversations.
Very hard conversations. We need to have hard conversations
existential conversations, so that the other people within this diverse community can start to respect us. That we are more than a master's degree. We are more than small talk and jollof rice. We are more than they are only good at rising in the corporate ladder, or they are only good for stability.
We need to build. We need to build.
We need to build.
That's for me. Like, I share that one. Like, and I argue with everyone every single time. I say to people, we need to build. Like, we need to build stuff. Like, we just need to build stuff. I'm tired of people telling me my cousin is a real estate agent. Arinze, forgive me. I love you with all my heart. Like, I love you so much.
You're in trouble.
But I'm tired of the real estate conversation. I am not saying you don't need to own a house, but I am absolutely tired of it.
Yeah, even this owning a house thing, like these other guys who must not be named, they also have that issue that if you don't own a house, you're a failure. And there's a guy that has come out, Ramit. He's a very
Oh
popular
yeah,
guy.
Ramin said, yeah, I know him.
Yeah,
If
he
you want
said
to be rich, I love how he
you can
tackles
be
it.
rich without buying a house. And I'm like, oh my God, where have you been all my life? Right? Don't get me
Oh
wrong, I
gosh.
like it, I love real estate and all that. But the fact that we as a community think real estate is the only way to wealth is even a
Yeah.
problem in itself. Because no one is looking at the data. The data shows that between 17 and 20 something percent of billionaires' net worth is real estate. The rest is in equities, private equity, and all that. And when I was telling people 2 years ago about this, they were like, "Oga, go and sit down." Now,
I'll buy two houses and then buy a Mercedes Benz.
then now people are starting to talk about it. So if you don't have that foresight and thinking long term, how do you expect to win, like you said, or catch up in general? It's not like we are in a race with other groups, but we
Yeah.
have the secret sauce. We have tenacity. We have that positivity, even in pressure situations. Why can't we use that aspect of our culture, in your words, to build? I know it's a bit of a critical take, but I'm not saying I'm there right now, but I'm happy where I've been because of the kind of choices that I've made. So yeah.
My
Deep,
last
man.
question.
I
I
hope
think
I hope I hope, I hope this is a special episode.
oh it is. Oh it is. Oh it is. And it is a good one. Honestly. And I share a lot of your sentiments. I mean, I also like to just like think about, like, I feel like culture, identity play a big role in how we approach the world. I do think that we lost something as a country, as a community sometime, because you read about us, like, I read about this story where Malcolm X came to Nigeria and he was like, how do you have black pilots in Nigeria and doctors back home in America? It didn't exist. So I'm like, we had a country like that, but then over time we lost all that. And people like to say, "Oh, but the people." I'm like, please don't tell me that. We've had the most useless leaders in Nigeria for a long time. I say
Yes.
that with all this.
Just
We've had the most
same.
useless leaders. Whenever people tell me,
I will
"Oh, the
even tell
people," I'm like,
whites.
the people make leaders. I'm like, please,
Tell
that is such
whites
a
too.
lazy thinking.
I'll tell my white colleagues. We have great people, bad leaders. So
Yeah, I'm like, we tell me one country in the world where the people have made the leaders. There's no place in the world, there's no example in the world where you say the people make leaders. No, the leaders make the country.
yeah.
But Nigerians, God, I'm getting angry.
Yeah.
I think my last question for you is, if you look back on your journey right now, what's the one thing you'd have done differently? Your Canadian journey, what's the one thing you'd have done differently? In hindsight, what's the one thing?
Yeah. I think the one thing would be to have built earlier. I think the last 3 years I've been doing a lot of building, and sometimes you don't have to. You were saying speaking of camera, you don't have to build on your own. You can build with people. I have 5% company stakes. It's still 5%. It's still something.
Yep.
But not being able to build earlier, especially during the pandemic. Oh my brother, I think I missed the pandemic a lot. But a lot of family stuff and a lot of, I guess, some foolishness going on around that time as well. But I immediately I got a second chance. I did not waste it, and I've been building ever since. Whether it's building my brands, building projects within my space, or even being part of organizations of my dreams, if you like.
Yeah.
It's all part of building, and I would really like to see how that goes. But I encourage anybody that is coming in. I have this guy that a family member that I hosted when she came in, and I'm like, I'm not saying you should not find job, but you need to build. This guy came in in Canada as an experienced computer village entrepreneur. Let's just put it that way. And I was like, bro, if I were you, while I'm looking for a job, I'll be doing, arbitrage, right? Buy something on Best Buy, buy it in bulk, because it's cheaper. It's cheaper when you buy it on Best Buy. It's when you are shipping it that's the problem. But when you buy it on Best Buy, you can ship in bulk to save the price. You send it to your mates in Computer Village, and you pocket the margin. So he hasn't done it yet, which is why I'm telling you. And no fault to him. He just had a baby. He's, and all that. The wife is not working and all that. But that's an example of building early. And that was, I was telling him, don't make the kind of mistake that I made. Even if you make a mistake, you do another one. You know, that's why it's called serial, whether it's serial entrepreneurs or serial builder. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's good advice. Yeah, it's good advice. Thanks so much, man.
No worries. This has been really, really fun, and
it was.
So thank you guys for listening as well.
All right. I might not agree with everything Dotun says, like not agree like about like just I feel like there's nuance and stuff to it, but he makes some really strong points about how we should approach ourselves as a community. Let me know what you think in the comments, or send me an email and tell me if you disagree with him, or if you have a counterpoint, come on here and let's talk about it. As always, just like, share, subscribe. We're on Substack, we're on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast, you find us there. And thanks for getting to this point of the episode. Have a beautiful day.